morning, beautiful people. Welcome to Kate Space. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for visiting if you're new, and thanks for coming back to all my lovely subscribers. I would love to wish you all a happy and creative new year if I haven't already. Now, today is my turn to interpret a prompt for Junk Journal January 2025, collaboration run by megjournals, and I will put all the details below so that you can go back. It's day 6 today, so we're still in the first week, plenty of time to get involved and join in. It's such a wonderful collaboration, lots of great artists and junk journalists and art journalists involved interpreting the prompts. So yeah, I hope that you will go and have a look at everybody else's videos as well. So my prompt that I chose was embossed, which I thought, oh yeah, I use embossed things in my journal. And then I got a little bit stumped on how to approach it as far as the video went. But anyway, I love incorporating embossed paper and card into my journals and also into my page spreads when I'm working in a journal as well, because I feel like it adds texture, dimension, and just interest, visual interest to the page. Also, it does add bulk, and not everybody wants to add bulk to their pages, but something that's embossed, because it does have dimension, is going to add bulk. So I thought about, not everybody has an embossing machine, a Big Shot or whatever the big embossing machines are. Not everybody has a heat gun and embossing powders. So I thought, what are the other ways we can incorporate embossing into our journals without those machines or tools? So one of the first things what I thought of was doilies, which you can find in your thrift shop or even in a craft shop. And they're still even really selling them in kitchen sort of type places. But see how these are embossed. So this is embossing, and actually these are really thin and don't add too much bulk. So that's a way you can add embossed things to your journal and your page spreads. Again, of course, there's the wallpaper. Wallpaper is a fabulous way to add embossing, and you can find these again in thrift stores, sometimes in secondhand stores, or sometimes interior decorators are getting rid of wallpaper books. This is actually off my daughter's wall in Auckland. She was stripping the wallpaper and I said, can I please have it? She thought I was a bit odd, but you know, you could cut this little piece out here and use it in your journal. These look great either way. I like them sometimes this way, and then you can sort of go over with some ink or some paint to like highlight the raised bits. And again, this one here is something I picked up like at a vintage sale. I picked up a roll of this, and again, I love both sides of this as well. So yeah, the wallpaper is a great one if you don't have an embossing machine. The other thing I thought of was old postcards. Vintage postcards often have embossing on them. So again, this would add some great texture and dimension to your journal. And the same with greeting cards. This is embossed, really lightly embossed, but it is just, these flowers are slightly raised. And this card here, although not technically embossed, I guess you'd call this flocked. It's got that raised sort of texture to it as well, and that's not vintage, I don't think. The other thing I thought of was labels and packaging. So this is a label off a wine bottle, and it has some embossing on it, and I love that. I'm hoping to use that at some point in my journal. And again, packaging. So this candle box, this is embossed here on the packaging. So heaps and heaps of ways that you can incorporate it. The other thing I thought of was wrapping paper. I don't have any wrapping paper that's embossed. Now there's lots of videos around on how to emboss without a machine. That you can use the embossing folders and a rolling pin or something to roll over it, but you need to use a lot of pressure. I didn't have any luck with it, but there are videos there if you search. There's also videos on how to emboss with a stencil and a stylus on a soft mat. I tried that too and didn't have much luck with it. So there are videos on different ways of embossing if you don't have a machine. So if you don't and you want to look those up, then yeah, just search for it. But I'm going to go over to my machine now and do some embossing, and we'll just talk about some of the things that I've learnt through trial and error, and then we'll come back and we'll look at them and do a page together. So here I am at my other desk with my Big Shot Plus by Pixiekstevens. Now I'm showing you some of the embossing folders that I have. These are all just kind of ordinary embossing folders. They're not the 3D kind, but I do have those. So this is one of my favorite 3D folders. That's also by Pixiekstevens. And they involve different platforms and levels. So the papers that I'm showing you here that I really like, and which are for 3D folders, definitely better, are the thicker papers. So there's some watercolor paper, heavy watercolor card, and the handmade white paper. Now I'm just showing you some tags made of craft cardstock and one of my library cards, which I also thought I would run through. Here's some wallpaper, which I'm not particularly fond of the pattern on it, but it's a real old one and it's paper and quite heavy, and that's a wall lining paper. And here is a very, very old document which I'm going to try, knowing that it may actually tear, so I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I thought I would try it because often those beautiful old documents with the rag paper actually are much stronger than some of the paper, like photocopy paper often tears. And here I have some just some ordinary brown packaging paper that comes in parcels. I think that's all I've collected up. So the first thing I'm going to do is start off with this watercolor card. I can't remember what weight it is, but I know Tim Holtz does say that for 3D embossing folders, a cardstock's better than a paper. Anyway, one of the tips I've got is to wet the paper. Now I just used to give it a little spritz, but I watched a video the other day and she said to actually wet the paper quite a lot. So I'm spraying it here with water, and then I'm rubbing the water all over the surface of the paper. I don't know how this is going to go because it's the first time I've done it this way, but this is how she did it, and she did get a very, very beautiful imprint. So I'm going to use this script folder. I've had this for a long time, so I won't be able to explain where I got it from because I don't remember. Now I'm trying to decide which way I want it to go. This is the first time I've used this machine. It's a new machine to me. I was looking on Facebook Marketplace for something else and was talking to the lady, and she said, I'm selling this Big Shot Plus as well. And you can't buy them in New Zealand at the moment, so I was like, I would love that because I wanted to try embossing bigger pieces of paper. So yeah, I'm thrilled with this. So here I am. I know there's going to be some camera wobble, so I hope you can put up with that, but that's just part of it. This is a wobbly process. So I run it through 2 to 3 times. Again, this is something that Tim Holtz has said to do, that you need to run it through more than once, but you know, again, there's differing opinions. I love how that one turned out. I think it turned out really beautifully. I thought I didn't show it to you for long enough, so I've brought it back. Really beautiful imprint on that paper. But yeah, I find watercolor cardstock is really, really good for embossing. I'm really, really impressed with how good it looks. So here's the craft tag, a pre-made tag that I just got out of my card bases box. And again, I'm giving it quite a good spray with the water. And I held all of these up to the light, and none of them were cut through, none of them tore. So I feel like the water really does work. So give it a go if you haven't already. You could even compare and do a dry one and a wet one through the embossing machine. You certainly don't need a big embossing machine like this, and often they are for sale because people have bought them and now they have Crickets or some of those electronic ones, so you can pick them up cheap on Marketplace and things like that if you don't already have one. Again, there is the technique of using the folder with something and pressing down really hard on it, but I haven't managed to make that work. So yep, this looks really good. I'm really, really pleased with how that one turned out as well. So the next thing I do is I actually do decide to do one without the water, so I'm popping that into the embossing folder now, and I'll run it through and I'll show you the result of that. I'm using the same tag, the same embossing folder, all the same plates and everything, so nothing's different except for the fact that the tag is dry. So here they are side by side. I'm not entirely sure if there's too much difference. I think maybe the wet one does have a bit more depth and detail to it. Yeah, I think it does. So I'll leave that to your opinion, really. Anyway, it was good to just compare them, I think. So then I go on to another folder and a different kind of paper, I think. Yes, so for these embossing folders, you use the base and the 2 acrylic and make a sandwich with the embossing folder. So this is the packaging card that is tag shaped, so it's just a slightly heavier. So you can see I'm putting the acrylic plate over the top, so I've made a sandwich with the embossing folder in the middle. Sometimes you have to play around with this because some are different with thicknesses. So that one turned out really well. Then I am grabbing the handmade paper and a 3D embossing folder. So this one, you remove one of the acrylics. You just use the base, an acrylic plate, and then the embossing folder. But again, with different machines, different embossing folders, sometimes you do have to play around and add a little bit of thickness with something. So a trick I learned was to put it in on an angle so it's not so hard to get through, but I found this machine super easy to pass the embossing folder through, and look how beautiful that has turned out. Really thrilled with it. It's excellent. The next paper I'm trying is a wall lining paper, so something that goes on the wall before wallpaper, or I'm not really sure, but it's quite a tough sort of feeling paper. So again, I'm wetting it and I'm going back to the 2 acrylic plates because this is not a 3D embossing folder, it's just an ordinary one, and I pass it through about 2 or 3 times each time that I'm doing it. So that was 2 and this is the 3rd time. And again, that's something else you might need to experiment with depending on your machine. Love how that one turned out as well. It's super pretty. So that's a really good paper if you find any of that in your thrift stores or op shops. The next paper I try is the brown packaging paper, and I want to keep this quite a large size because I think sometimes it's nice to make a page and have a part of your page embossed. So you can see I'm wetting this down quite a lot, and I'm actually a little bit dubious about whether this is going to tear or not, but anyway, I'm going to give it a good try. So I'm folding the paper to put it through the machine because I want a bigger piece of paper that I might be able to use and fold as a page in a journal at some point. So that is something that you can do. It does add, depending on the paper, it's going to add a little bit of thickness. So here's my acrylic plate and I'm going to run this through. Possibly only need to do it once or twice. I'm not sure how many times I do this. Yep, I only do it twice because I am a bit nervous about the paper tearing and it is quite wet. So I may have wet this a little bit much. So we'll have to wait for it to dry and I'll show you it later, but I did worry that maybe there was a little tear. Yep, just a little bit of a tear down the bottom there. So we will look at that later when it is dry. So I'm getting brave here and I'm going to use my very old antique document, and I'm using an ultra new embossing folder. I don't even know if you can get this one anymore, but it is a really cool one. It just sort of embosses that frame. I'm sure you've seen it around. So yep, I've wet the document and I'm passing it through. I'm not sure how many times I put it through, so it's a little bit tough, and I think this is one where I start having to experiment with shims and things. So I grab one of the other plates that come with the embossing machine. Nope, that's still not thick enough. So yeah, this is an example of having a little experiment because all the embossing folders are not created equal. They're all different thicknesses. So there I'm trying some plastic things and that doesn't really work for me. So I go on the hunt for something else. Now this is a broken embossing folder I've got, so it's one piece of plastic, but I decided that's too thick. Yeah, so it does get a little bit tricky. In the end, I go for the next plate of the Sizzix and I try that and I pass that through and that works. So yeah, experimentation is necessary. I only went through twice because of course I was really nervous about ripping the document, but I don't, and I love how it looks. So really stoked with that as well. The next thing I do is the library catalogue card, and for this I'm using a embossing folder that I know needs that plastic shim underneath it. It's one I bought and I broke it, but I taped it together because I love it so much. It's got roses on it. And so I'm running that through 3 times and I have wet the card. So let's see how that works out. It's hard to see with the type behind it, but yeah, that's turned out really beautifully as well. The next paper I try is the old wallpaper, and I suddenly realise when I'm spraying it that might be pre-pasted and get all gluey, but it doesn't, so it must be quite an old one, but it is something to keep in mind when you're spraying. Again, I'm using a 3D on this one, and I want the pattern, the right side, to be the blank side of the wallpaper. So this is another Sizzix 3D embosser, so I'm just using the base plate and one acrylic plate and putting that through. And again, I'm sort of sticking it on an angle. With the last one I had the acrylic plate underneath, and this one I'm putting it on top. I don't think it matters too much, so if it does, one of these is wrong. So anyway, I put the acrylic plate over the top for this one, and I think I run it through 3 times. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, yeah, so I run it through 3 times, and let's see how that has gone with the really deep embossing. It looks really good from here, so let's have a look. Yep, so that's a beautiful embossing folder, lots and lots of detail there, and I think that there's a little, oh yep, there is a little bit of a tear on the side there. So again, you know, that I guess that is quite old paper, so it may be more likely to tear, but I still love how it looks anyway. The next thing I give a go is some 90 GSM tracing paper, and again, this is A4, and I'm really happy that I can run this whole piece of paper through my embossing machine. I don't have to tear it down at all. So I do wet this part of it, and I run it through, and I just do it 2 times, I can see there, and that's how that looks. I really love embossing tracing paper and vellum. It gives a really lovely look. So this time I'm wetting it down again a little bit more. I'm not sure why I'm doing it twice. Maybe I didn't wet the first one as much. So I'm putting that through again. And let's see how we get, what we get this time. So again, just running it twice, and there it is there. It's quite wrinkly, but we can have a look at that next time. But there's no tears as far as I can tell in that paper, so yeah, really happy with that. And last but not least, I decide I'd like to try and emboss these 2 vintage envelopes that I've had hanging around for a while. So I don't want to get it on the window part, the glassine part. So again, I only run that through twice, and it's through both layers, but yeah, I love how that turned out. And then I've got this other one, this yellow one, and this is something I thought I might use in my page for my journal, and I'm popping that through. I've wet that as well, so I'm just working out how far over I want the embossing to go and where I want it to go. Again, I sort of want it down the side, so I change the folder over and decide maybe I'll use that one. Yep, so a bit of water on both sides and then sticking it in. I haven't actually rubbed that water in like I have for the other pieces, but it is thinner paper, so it doesn't really need as much water, I don't think. So yeah, passing that through a couple of times. And there we go, there's the results there, which again are quite hard to see, but love it. It's the next day and I would like to just quickly go through the embossing that we did together. Now this was the first piece. This is a piece of watercolor card. It's not super heavy, but it's definitely heavier than a paper. And I absolutely love the way that's embossed. And again, we may have some issues seeing it. The weather here has turned from bright, beautiful, sunny, boiling hot days to raining, windy, cold. Well, not cold, but cool, which is great because we were on water restrictions. We had so little water. So this one here is one of my favorite embossing folders. I'm just going to try angling it so you can see it, and I love how that turned out. I'm holding them up and I can't see any cuts in those ones. Here's the two that I tried, one dry and one wet, and to me I really feel like this one has embossed way better than the dry one. I can see it. You might not be able to see it as clearly on camera, but it just proves to me that the wetting of the card is actually makes a big difference. So yeah, if that's the only tip that you get from this video, if you're embossing, then so be it. So this is the packaging from a muesli bar box, and again it's been coffee dyed first, and then it's embossed beautifully as well. The handmade cotton rag paper is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. It's so beautiful, and there's no tears in that one whatsoever, and that's a 3D embossing folder. This is the paper for the wall lining paper, and that's embossed really nicely too. It's quite a light emboss. I maybe could have gone a little bit heavier through the embossing folder, but again, there's no tears in it, and it seems to have held the embossing really well. This is the wrapping, the packaging paper, where I just wanted to do part of it to show you that, say you were putting this in a journal, this is the paper that has that kind of tear off bit. You could make this into a page, and that could be on your actual page. Now I'm just going to hold it up to the light. Yeah, so there were a few little tears in this. There's one there that you can hardly see. So there's just few little places where the folder is cut through the paper. I did wet it quite a lot, so I'm just trying to make it so you can see it. I did wet it quite a lot, so that'll be why. But the good thing about this is it's nice and thin. So if you wanted to put it in your journal and glue it down, it's not going to create too much bulk. So that's that one. The wallpaper, where I don't love this side and I just wanted to emboss this side. This turned out really well. I'm just holding this one up. This is a 3D, and I do find this one tends to cut. But again, the Tim Holtz, if you watch him using some of his 3D folders, he does say they are designed for card stock rather than just paper. So that's that. And you know, it's even quite cool on this side, the embossing on the pattern side. But yeah, that's that one. This one here, I went gently with this. I put a little bit of water on it, and I love how this has turned out. And again, if I hold it up, this has not cut through this paper, which I'm really, really pleased about because it's very, very old. The tracing paper, I did that twice, and I'm not quite sure why, because I was doing a voiceover the next day of doing it. And maybe that I wet one or something more than the other, but that has embossed really well. There's no cuts in that. You see how it kind of goes a bit white where it's pushed the paper through. So I do think it's important to wet it when you're doing tracing paper as well. This one I cut out of the video because it was getting very long, and this is just embossing a postcard. It has cracked some of the gloss on the paper, but it looks really nice on the other side. So that was a postcard, and here's the two envelopes that I did. So there's this window one, and that seems to have, because I wet it, it's sealed itself shut, which I'll just leave it like that, because I think I would probably maybe tear the top off and make it into a pocket, or a pocket that way. I'm not that keen about this green and yellow BP logo, so yeah, I'd probably cover that up. And here's the yellow one that I thought I might use in my journal, so let's just hang on to that. And I want to quickly do a page. I don't know, I want to be quick because I know that I've already taken up lots of your time. So here's my cover. So this was prompt 1 cover. Prompt 2 was envelope, although I'm not sure that I still feel like this is part of the cover prompt. I'm planning on putting a photo here. I often put a photo of myself in my journals at the beginning, and I'm going to pop the prompts in here. I've printed them out, but I'm going to print them out a bit smaller and pop them into there. So that was that, and again I've done some embossing here of this envelope. So this envelope was on the inside of this pre-made journal, and I have taken it off and just had a bit of a play with it, and I ran it through my embosser. I was a bit worried about these eyelets, but they were fine. And then I've rubbed just some paint over it, so I love that look. Now I'm doing this in advance, so obviously I haven't started all the prompts yet, and the good thing about this journal is I can take it apart. So I think I might just work on a piece of paper for this prompt, and I'm just thinking that I might use a doily, because I really love using doilies. And again, it's just to show that you don't have to have an embossing folder or an embossing machine to add embossing to your page. So I'm thinking about something like this, but I've got this, I've been using the scrapbooking pad. I quite like the idea of this pattern coming out from behind, or maybe even in front of this. So when this video goes up, I'll actually be on holiday and I'll be camping with my sister. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, obviously, because I'm making this video before I go away. I kind of like that, but I'm not sure what I would do here, because I wondered about this, so that, yeah, this coming out either side. I mean, this is designed for a scrapbook page, obviously, but I'm just wondering if I could do something like that. But then I don't know how much of the thing you're going to see. Okay, so what I would like to do is I need to cut or tear along here. Yes, and I'm wondering whether I might put some photos of the holiday in. So this page may end up with a sort of a gap where I can put a photo. And I really don't know if I'm going to like this anyway, but I'm going to give it a go. I don't usually use yellow. It's not a colour I usually go for. But in saying that, I have actually bought a dress that is largely yellow for my daughter's wedding in January, which is where I'll be going after my holiday, beach holiday with my sister and her husband and son. So yeah, I'm going to go like that, and then I'm going to tear. I don't want it all the way to the edge. This may not work, in which case it will be discarded. It's okay, it's just paper. Sometimes when you buy one of these packs, you just don't start using it or tearing into it because you're so worried about, I don't know, it not turning out. But again, like I said, it is just paper. So So that's the page. Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know if I like that after all that. I mean, I love this. So let's just have a look at what we've got. We've got this doily and we've got this piece of paper here. And our prompt is embossed, so we do want to include some embossed paper. I want to include some embossed paper that I've embossed, obviously. And that's why I was going to use this envelope. And then possibly tuck something inside of it. So I still might do that. Now the doily's too big. Just go like that so I can get an idea of what it's gonna maybe look like. And then I've still got some of this. Because that's the other option, is something like that. Almost like that. Okay, so I'm just going to have a play here, tearing. I'm going to tear this off. The other embossing that we didn't really talk about was heat embossing, and I didn't really think I had time to go into all of that. But there's lots of videos online about, on heat embossing. Okay, so it kind of has to be like that. So we're going to have to take this edge off as well. Again, it requires tools, but the good thing about the heat embossing is that it is less bulky, so it's not going to create so much bulk to your projects, but it still adds a little bit of dimension and it looks really nice. Okay, don't really know what I am doing here, but anyway, this is very white, this paper, which is almost a bit disturbing for me, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tea dye it. So I'm just going to go like this, and I'm going to take the bottom off. Then I'm going to go and just run some tea over it, a light tea dye, and dry it, and then I'll be right back. So I put some tea dye on the paper and I've dried it, but it's still a little bit damp. And while it was a little bit damp, I decided to run it through the embosser with this rose floral design and see how that looked. And I do like that. I'm still not entirely sure about this envelope. And if I was going to use a photo where I would put that. The other thing we could do is mirror that rose and use a card and put the photo sort of in this area here, which would work quite nicely. And then I just wanted to decide whether I was going to use any doily at all under here. So it could go like that. Just get a smaller doily. Yeah, so this might work a bit better, just being that much smaller. I don't hate it. And then I can make something that can go into here, and my photo can maybe sit here. I'm just not sure about this piece. It feels like it, I feel like it needs something. I don't know whether it needs some textile or some lace just running up there to disguise that that's not embossed. I could go and emboss it. I could use some of this paper. I love this, and I'm wondering whether I might actually use that as a tag to go in there. I think I quite like this so far. The other thing I could do is I've got a stamp that kind of looks, not really, but kind of looks a little bit like that, and I'm wondering whether I stamp on here. So I might go and do that, and I don't know, I might not like it, but I might as well. So what I've ended up doing is using the ink that you use with embossing powders. I don't have many embossing powders, but I thought maybe I'll try the white. So I'm just going to sprinkle that on. So this is a Ranger embossing powder. And then tap it off. And then I'll go back over to my other desk, and I'll use the heat gun on it to heat it up, and we'll see what it looks like. So there we have it. Maybe I used a little bit too much of the clear embossing ink, or trying to do that stamping over embossing, dry embossing, is also a bit tricky. I don't actually hate it, so I'm actually going to go with it. I'm just wondering about whether I'm going to stitch this on. I feel like it kind of covers up that sort of flat space there, so I'm kind of okay with it. I may end up doing a little cluster of lace or something up here. I've got this rusty paper clip, but it's got pink on it, and I might just see if I've got anything yellow. That would be funny. I'm going to see if I have that, but that's not right. I don't really have anything yellow. I have this sort of orangey color, which won't work, and then I have this, which is sort of a gold. That might work, I guess. Or I just have some cream. Yeah, so like I said, yellow's not a colour I have a lot of. And if we cut this maybe, and I'm aware that this video is getting way too long, so I'm probably going to have to stop soon, but that's okay, because I'll be back and I can show you what I end up. Oh, I can get another pin too. So yeah, those are my thoughts at the moment. Is the doily. So we've got this embossing here and there, and then we've got this heat embossed, which, I mean, it's probably a little bit much if I'm honest, so it may end up changing. But that's sort of the general layout of the page, and then I would maybe pop a photo. So I'll just get an old photo, probably something sort of this size, and I might just pop it there. That's my idea at this stage, is pop the little photo. Quite like these little swatches here, and it would be quite cool to mirror those with some yellow paints maybe, and do something there. But again, this video has gone on for a long time. So that's what I've got to. I'm going to call it a day. We've talked about embossing. There's so many different videos out there, so if you feel like I haven't covered it adequately, you can search it and learn more. And I think I may make a tag out of this to pop in there. I don't know. So yeah, that is my layout for Embossed Junk Journal January Day 6. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. And I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful January and 2025. And I'll see you again soon because I'll be doing some more prompts. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.